Could God choose an ordinary farm girl to share one of history's most powerful Marian messages with the world? The life of Saint Catherine Labouré proves that divine providence doesn't seek human greatness, but humble and willing hearts. This unassuming French nun, the keeper of a heavenly secret for nearly half a century, was chosen by the Blessed Virgin Mary to spread devotion to the Miraculous Medal, bringing comfort, conversion, and countless blessings to millions worldwide. Chapter 1. The Girl from Burgundy. Zoe Labouré was born on May 2, 1806, in Fin-les-Moutiers, a small village in the Burgundy region of France. She was the ninth of 17 children born to Peter Labouré and Madeleine Gontard, a deeply Catholic farming family who lived off the land. The golden wheat fields and vineyards surrounding their home would be the first stage where God would mold the soul of this young girl destined for great things. From her earliest years, Zoe breathed the clean country air and learned the value of honest work and simple prayer that rose each night in the family home. Zoe's childhood was spent doing daily chores on the farm and attending liturgical celebrations in the small village church. Her mother would take her hand to Sunday Mass, where the little girl would gaze with devotion at the sacred images and listen attentively to the words of the gospel. In the time after the French Revolution, the Catholic faith was experiencing a powerful rebirth in the villages of France, and the Labouré family was a living example of this spiritual restoration. The prayers of the Holy Rosary intertwined with the songs of birds at dawn, as little Zoe grew up surrounded by the love of her siblings and the protection of her parents. Tragedy struck the family when Zoe was only 9 years old. Her mother, Madeleine, passed away on October 9, 1815, leaving an immense void in the hearts of her children. Little Zoe was deeply affected by this loss, and it is said that shortly after the funeral, the little girl climbed onto a chair, took an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary in her hands that was in the house, and kissing it tenderly said, "Now you will be my mother." This act of childlike faith would prove prophetic, as the Mother of God would take special care of this orphan and choose her for an extraordinary mission. Without her mother's presence, Zoe took on many of the household responsibilities. Alongside her older sisters, she took care of her younger siblings, helped in the kitchen, tended to the farm animals, and worked in the fields according to the seasons. Despite her young age, the girl showed a surprising maturity and a capacity for sacrifice that inspired everyone who knew her. Her father, though a man of few words, recognized in Zoe an uncommon strength of spirit and a natural goodness that seemed to spring from the depths of her being. The lack of formal education did not prevent this simple soul from cultivating the virtues that truly matter in the eyes of God. During these formative years, Zoe developed a rich and deep inner life. She spent long moments in prayer before the tabernacle of the parish church, where she found comfort and peace. The images of the saints that adorned the walls of the church spoke silently to her of the vocation to radically follow Christ. In her heart, a seed of consecration began to sprout, which, although not yet fully defined, already impelled her to seek something beyond what the world could offer her. This girl from Burgundy, formed in the school of the cross and hard work, was being prepared by divine providence to become a messenger of heavenly graces. Chapter 2. Heaven's Calling. At 18, Zoe experienced a supernatural confirmation of her religious vocation through a prophetic dream. One night, while sleeping in her humble room, an elderly priest appeared to her in a dream, celebrating Holy Mass. The priest's face shone with a particular light, and although Zoe didn't know him, she felt an immediate spiritual attraction to him. In the dream, the old priest looked at her with paternal kindness, as if inviting her to follow him on the path of holiness. When she awoke, the young woman was deeply impressed by the experience, without yet understanding its true meaning. Shortly after, Zoe had a second similar dream, But this time the elderly priest appeared visiting the sick in a hospital. She accompanied him in his ministry of charity, comforting those who suffered and bringing relief to those in need. Upon waking again, the young woman felt a growing certainty in her heart. God was calling her to a life of service, to the poor and the sick within religious life. These dreams were not mere nocturnal fantasies, but true promptings of the Holy Spirit, preparing her soul to embrace the vocation to which she had been destined from all eternity. However, the path to fulfilling her vocation would not be easy. Her father, Peter Labouré, had other plans for her and firmly opposed her entering a convent. He needed Zoe's help on the farm, especially after becoming a widower, and considered marriage the natural destiny for his daughters. With her heart divided between filial obedience and the divine call, Zoe agreed to work for a time in Paris at the restaurant run by her older brother, hoping that this experience would change her father's mind. In the bustling French capital, far from the quiet fields of Burgundy, the young woman kept her purity and her desire for consecration intact. During her time in Paris, Zoe was able to frequent the city's churches and get to know different religious communities. She visited convents, participated in charitable works, and remained faithful to her life of prayer, despite the worldly environment that surrounded her. Her brother appreciated her diligent work in the restaurant, but the young woman felt that this was not her true vocation. Every time she passed a religious house or saw the sisters serving the poor in the streets, her heart was moved, and the inner voice became more insistent. The Virgin Mary, whom she had taken as her mother in her childhood, interceded for her before the throne of God so that the doors of her consecration would open. After months of patience and prayer, the answer came unexpectedly. One day, Zoe visited the hospital of Châtillon-sur-Seine, where the Daughters of Charity of Saint Vincent de Paul served. As she entered the hospital chapel, her eyes were drawn to a painting depicting Saint Vincent de Paul, and her heart skipped a beat. It was the same elderly priest she'd seen in her dreams years before. This realization was like a bolt of lightning, clearing away all her doubts. God himself had shown her the path, and Saint Vincent de Paul would be her spiritual father, her guide in religious life. With renewed determination, Zoe reapplied for her father's permission, and this time, faced with her persistence and the evident divine will, her father finally relented, allowing her to follow her calling. Chapter 3. The Daughters of Charity. On April 21st, 1830, Zoe Labouré crossed the threshold of the Daughters of Charity Seminary located at 140 Rue du Bac in Paris, France. This house of formation would welcome the 24-year-old country girl who came to dedicate herself entirely to the service of God and the poor. Upon entering the novitiate, Zoe received the religious name Sister Catherine, officially beginning her new life as a bride of Christ. The community of the Daughters of Charity, founded in 1633 by Saint Vincent de Paul and Saint Louise de Marillac, devoted themselves to the care of the sick, the education of impoverished children, and every form of corporal and spiritual charity. The Vincentian charism was characterized by a profoundly Christ-centered spirituality, combined with practical service to those most in need. The Daughters of Charity were not cloistered nuns, but consecrated women who brought the love of Christ to the streets, hospitals, and schools. Their motto, "The charity of Christ urges us," inspired every action and sacrifice. Sister Catherine found in this way of religious life the perfect synthesis between contemplation and action, prayer and service that her soul longed for. The white bonnets framing their faces and the grayish-blue habits became a sign of hope for the poor of Paris and the world over. During her first months in the seminary, Sister Catherine distinguished herself by her humility, simplicity, and spirit of prayer. Although she did not possess a refined academic education, and barely knew how to read and write. Her spiritual intelligence was remarkable. She participated fervently in the community's pious practices: daily mass, adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, recitation of the Divine Office, and meditations on the gospel virtues. Her fellow novices considered her a quiet but fervent sister, someone in whom a special union with God was perceived. No one imagined that this silent religious sister was being prepared to receive extraordinary mystical graces. The director of the seminary was Father John Mary Aladell, a pious and prudent Lazarist priest who spiritually guided the young women in formation. Sister Catherine felt great respect for him, although their relationship would always remain within the strictest formality. Formation in the seminary included not only doctrinal and spiritual instruction, but also practical learning of the charitable works that characterized the congregation. The novices visited hospitals, nursing homes, and the homes of the poor, where they learned to serve with maternal tenderness those who suffered most. This experience confirmed in Sister Catherine's heart that she had found her true place in the Church. The spiritual atmosphere of the seminary was particularly intense in that year of 1830. France was experiencing times of great political and social turmoil, with the July Revolution that would overthrow King Charles II. Amidst the temporal uncertainty, the Daughters of Charity remained steadfast in their consecration, trusting in divine providence. The heart of young Sister Catherine burned with a growing desire to see the Blessed Virgin Mary, that heavenly mother to whom she had consecrated her life since childhood. Her simple faith led her to ask insistently for this favor, unaware that heaven was about to answer her prayers in a way that would surpass all her expectations. Dear brothers and sisters, did you know the story of Saint Catherine Labouré before this video? Did you know that she received the celestial message of the Miraculous Medal? We would love to know where you're listening to us from right now. Write us in the comments. What country or city are you joining us from? May the Blessed Virgin Mary and Saint Catherine Labouré intercede for each and every one of you. Let's continue now with the story. Chapter 4. The First Apparition. On the night of July 18th to 19th, 1830, the eve of the feast of Saint Vincent de Paul, Sister Catherine went to bed with a burning desire in her heart to behold the Blessed Virgin Mary. During the day, she had received a piece of cloth from Saint Vincent de Paul's surplice, a relic that she kept with devotion under her pillow, trusting that the Holy Founder would intercede for her. At 11:30 at night, while her companions slept soundly, the young religious sister was awakened by a sweet voice calling her name. Opening her eyes, she saw next to her bed a child radiant with light, approximately 4 or 5 years old, dressed in white. The mysterious child, whom Sister Catherine recognized as her guardian angel, said to her in a clear voice, "Come to the chapel, the Blessed Virgin awaits you." Without hesitating for an instant, the religious sister got up, dressed quickly, and followed the resplendent messenger through the seminary corridors. All the doors that were normally locked opened at her approach, and the lamps in the chapel were lit as on Christmas night. The angel led her to the sanctuary, where he instructed her to kneel next to the spiritual director's armchair, to the right of the altar. There, Sister Catherine waited in prayer, her heart throbbing with emotion and reverence. At midnight, the angel announced, "Behold the Blessed Virgin." Then, Sister Catherine heard a soft rustling, like the swish of a silk dress, and saw the Mother of God descend, seating herself in the armchair with indescribable majesty and sweetness. The Virgin Mary appeared dressed in white, with a veil also white that covered her head and fell over her shoulders. Her beauty was incomparable, and her face radiated a maternal goodness that filled the young seer's soul with comfort. Unable to contain herself, Sister Catherine rushed towards her, fell to her knees, and rested her hands on the lap of the Blessed Virgin, experiencing the sweetest moment of her entire life. For more than 2 hours, the Mother of God conversed with her chosen daughter as a mother speaks with her beloved child. She revealed the trials that would come upon France and upon the Church, the future tribulations, and the need for prayer. She spoke of the special mission that she would entrust to her, although without yet revealing all the details. The Virgin Mary said to her, "God wishes to entrust you with a mission. You'll have much to suffer, but you'll overcome it by remembering you're doing it for God's glory. You will face opposition, but you won't lack grace. Come to the foot of this altar here. Graces will be poured out upon all who ask for them with confidence and fervor." Every word was etched into Sister Catherine's heart, unforgettably. When the vision ended, the Blessed Virgin vanished as she had appeared, gradually fading into a cloud of light. The guardian angel escorted Sister Catherine back to her room, where the seminary bells were ringing at 2 in the morning. The young nun could barely sleep the rest of the night, reliving those heavenly moments again and again. The next morning, while her sisters commented they had heard noises during the night they couldn't explain, Sister Catherine remained silent, treasuring in her heart the sacred secret she had just received. This first apparition would be the prelude to a Marian message that would transform millions of lives throughout the Catholic world. Chapter 5. The Revelation of the Miraculous Medal. On November 27, 1830, a Saturday evening, Sister Catherine was in the seminary chapel, engaged in her evening meditation with the other novices. As she prayed silently, she heard again the same soft rustling sound that had preceded the first apparition, like the swish of a silk dress. Looking up towards the altar, she saw the Blessed Virgin Mary appear, standing on a globe, with a small sphere crowned by a cross in her hands. The Virgin was dressed in a radiant white gown. A white veil covered her head, and her bare feet crushed a serpent, an image of victory over the devil. The beauty of the apparition was indescribable. The Blessed Virgin's eyes were raised to heaven in supplication, offering to God the globe she held in her hands, a symbol of the entire world. Her fingers were adorned with rings, from which rays of light of varying intensities streamed down to earth. An inner voice explained to Sister Catherine the meaning of this vision. These rays are the symbol of the graces the Blessed Virgin obtains for mankind. The young visionary noticed that some rings emitted no rays, and the Virgin made her understand that these represented the graces that people forget to ask for or do not receive with faith and trust. Suddenly, the scene transformed. An oval formed around the Blessed Virgin, and written in golden letters were these words, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee." This invocation surrounded the image of the Mother of God, like a crown of glory. Then, Sister Catherine heard a voice saying to her, "Have a medal struck according to this model. Those who wear it will receive great graces, especially if they wear it around their neck. Graces will be abundant for those who wear it with confidence." This was the specific mission that heaven entrusted to her, to be the instrument for spreading devotion to Mary in the world. Under this particular invocation, the vision continued to transform before the seer's eyes. The tableau turned around, showing her the reverse side of the medal. On it appeared a large letter, M, surmounted by a cross. Below the M were 2 hearts, one crowned with thorns, representing the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and the other pierced by a sword, symbolizing the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The entire ensemble was surrounded by 12 stars, evoking the woman of the Apocalypse. Every detail of the medal had a profound theological and Marian significance, synthesizing fundamental truths of the Catholic faith: the Immaculate Conception of Mary, her role as mediatrix of all graces, and her intimate union with the redemptive mystery of Christ. This same apparition was repeated several times during the following months, always with the same insistent message to strike the medal. Sister Catherine saw the Blessed Virgin at different times of the day, particularly during Holy Mass and evening prayer. However, None of her companions perceived anything extraordinary. The young nun found herself facing a dilemma: how to communicate this heavenly message without exposing herself to ridicule or disbelief, with reverential fear, but also with obedience to the divine will. Sister Catherine decided to reveal the apparitions to her spiritual director, Father Aladel, trusting that he would discern the authenticity of the supernatural manifestations and take the necessary steps to fulfill the mission that heaven had entrusted to her. Chapter 6. The silence maintained. Father Aladel's initial reaction to Sister Catherine's account was one of prudent skepticism. As an experienced spiritual director, he was well aware of the dangers of mystical illusions and the deceptions of the enemy, who can appear under the guise of piety. He questioned the nun meticulously about every detail of the apparitions, looking for contradictions or signs of heightened fantasy. However, the simplicity with which Sister Catherine narrated the events, her profound humility, and the theological coherence of the message gradually convinced him that it was something authentically supernatural. Even so, the priest imposed absolute silence on her and ordered her not to speak to anyone else about the matter. For months, Father Aladel reflected and prayed about what he should do with this revelation. He consulted discreetly with other priests and theologians without revealing the identity of the visionary. Sister Catherine's insistence, faithfully conveying the Blessed Virgin's wishes regarding the striking of the medal, finally overcame his last resistance. In 1832, after obtaining the necessary approvals from the Archbishop of Paris, Monsignor Kellen, the first 1,500 medals were struck according to the design revealed to the visionary. The rapidity with which they spread, and the numerous favors and conversions attributed to their use, confirmed the divine origin of the message. Sister Catherine's most heroic decision was to keep the secret of her identity as a visionary for her entire life. Although devotion to the miraculous medal spread like wildfire throughout France, and then throughout the world, no one in her community, except Father Aladel and later her confessor, knew who was the nun privileged with the apparitions. Her own sisters in community wore the medal around their necks, received extraordinary graces through her intercession, and talked about the prodigies of the Blessed Virgin's medal, without imagining that the humble Sister Catherine, who worked quietly beside them, was the recipient of the heavenly message. This voluntary anonymity was a heavy cross, but also a protective grace. Saint Catherine thus avoided unhealthy curiosity, human admiration, and all the temptations of vainglory that might have accompanied public notoriety. Her life continued in complete normalcy, waking up with the community, keeping to the prayer schedules, working in the offices assigned to her, serving the poor with quiet dedication. When her sisters spoke with enthusiasm about the apparitions of the Rue du Bac, or commented on some extraordinary conversion worked by the miraculous medal, she listened in silence, inwardly rejoicing in the glory that was given to the Blessed Virgin. Saint Catherine's silence was not passivity, but an active form of humility and abandonment in the hands of God. She knew that her mission was not to be known or admired, but simply to have been the docile instrument, so that the Marian message would reach the world. The Virgin Mary herself had promised that she would be with her, and this invisible maternal presence sustained her during all the years of her religious life. In a time when the Church suffered persecution and attacks, when rationalism threatened the faith of many, the miraculous medal became a powerful sacramental, reminding the Christian people of Mary's maternal love and her constant intercession before the throne of God. Chapter 7. Service at the Enghien Hospice. In February 1831, barely 3 months after the apparitions of the Blessed Virgin, Saint Catherine finished her novitiate and was sent to the Enghien Hospice for the elderly in the suburb of Paris. There, She would spend the next 46 years of her life dedicated to the humble service of the poor and abandoned. Her main task was to care for the elderly women of the hospice, attend the asylum's gate, and take care of the chickens and pigeons that provided food to the institution. It was a simple, repetitive job, without any human glory, exactly the kind of life that corresponded to her spirit of humility and desire to remain hidden. The Enghien Hospice housed about 100 elderly women, many of them sick, alone, and abandoned by their families. Saint Catherine attended to them with a maternal tenderness, reminiscent of the charity of Saint Vincent de Paul. She prepared their meals, helped them dress and wash, administered their medicine, and above all, offered them company and comfort in their loneliness. She saw in each of those elderly women the very face of the suffering Christ, and her service was a true, silent adoration. She never complained about the monotony of the work or the ingratitude she sometimes received, but she fulfilled each task with the perfection that comes from love. Her daily life followed the rhythm of the religious community. She got up at 4 in the morning to participate in community prayer and Holy Mass. After breakfast, the day's work began, attending to the elderly women, cleaning the rooms, working in the garden, taking care of the animals. In the afternoon, there was time for adoration of the Blessed Sacrament and the praying of the Holy Rosary. The night concluded with the examination of conscience and the final prayers before rest. It was a completely ordinary existence, with nothing that distinguished her from the other daughters of charity who served in the multiple asylums, hospitals, and schools of the congregation. However, under this appearance of normalcy, Saint Catherine maintained an inner life of extraordinary depth. During Eucharistic adoration, her soul was lost in the contemplation of the divine mysteries. In her heart, she constantly relived the apparitions of the Blessed Virgin, those celestial conversations that remained engraved in her memory with complete clarity. She suffered intensely, seeing the sufferings of the Church and the souls that were lost for lack of faith and conversion. She offered her works, sacrifices, and prayers for the conversion of sinners and the sanctification of priests, aware that silent intercession has an incalculable value before God. The sisters who lived with Saint Catherine in the Enghien Hospice considered her an edifying religious, but without anything extraordinary. They saw her as someone pious, hard-working, obedient, and charitable, virtues that were expected of every daughter of charity. Some found her perhaps too serious or silent, but no one suspected the spiritual treasure that was hidden in that simple soul. Thus, the decades passed, while the world changed rapidly around her. Political revolutions, wars, social transformations. But in the small Enghien Hospice, Saint Catherine remained faithful to her post, like a silent sentinel guarding a sacred secret, waiting for the day when God would call her to receive the eternal reward for her heroic fidelity. Chapter 8. The Virtues of a Saint. The virtue that shone most in Saint Catherine was her deep and sincere humility. Despite having been chosen by heaven as a messenger of an extraordinary gift for the Church, she never sought human recognition, nor considered herself superior to her sisters. She performed the humblest jobs with the same dedication, as if they were the most important tasks in the world. When she was assigned especially unpleasant or difficult services, she accepted them with inner joy, seeing them as opportunities to be more fully conformed to Christ crucified. Her motto could have been the words of the Lord, "Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart." Obedience was another of her characteristic virtues. She obeyed her superiors promptly and without discussion, even when the orders seemed to go against her own desires or judgments. When Father Aladel ordered her to keep silent about the apparitions, she obeyed without hesitation, even though this meant bearing the weight of that secret alone. She practiced what spiritual teachers call blind obedience, trusting that the will of God was manifested through legitimate authority. This docility did not arise from weakness of character, but from a robust faith that saw in obedience the surest path to holiness. Fraternal charity permeated all her relationships with the other sisters and with the elderly women she cared for. She was never heard murmuring against anyone or participating in the small criticisms that sometimes arose in community life. She had a kind word for each person, a gesture of comfort for those who suffered, a serene smile to brighten the grey days. When a sister treated her harshly or unfairly, she responded with meekness without holding a grudge. She saw in each neighbor a child of God, worthy of love and respect, regardless of their character or condition. Her charity was not sentimental, but supernatural, founded on the love that Christ himself has for us. Her spirit of prayer was intense and constant. Even though her duties kept her busy during the day, she always found time for intimate conversation with God. She seized every free moment to visit the tabernacle, where she remained still in silent adoration. During her manual labor, her mind and heart continuously soared toward heavenly realities. She prayed the Holy Rosary with particular fervor, meditating on the mysteries of the lives of Christ and Mary. Her Eucharistic devotion was the center of her spirituality, and in Holy Mass, she found the source of all her strength for daily service. Finally, Sister Catherine possessed a profound spirit of sacrifice. She mortified her own will in the small, everyday things, eating without preference whatever was served, sleeping little to prolong her nighttime prayer, enduring the cold and the heat without complaint. She offered these hidden sacrifices for the intentions that the Blessed Virgin had entrusted to her: the conversion of sinners, the sanctification of priests and religious, and the triumph of the Church over its enemies. She knew that the value of a soul isn't measured by the extraordinary actions performed before others, but by the love with which one fulfills the divine will in every moment, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. In this school of ordinary virtues, lived in an extraordinary way, Sister Catherine reached the highest peaks of holiness. Chapter 9. The Fruits of the Miraculous Medal. The spread of the Miraculous Medal was truly prodigious. In just a few years, millions of medals had been minted and distributed throughout the Catholic world. The faithful wore it around their necks as a sign of their consecration to Mary and of their trust in her maternal intercession. The name Miraculous arose spontaneously from the Christian people. Upon witnessing the countless favors, conversions, and healings attributed to its use with faith, the Church, with its usual prudence, didn't officially declare miracles, but it couldn't deny the abundance of testimonies arriving from everywhere, confirming the promises that the Blessed Virgin had made to Sister Catherine. One of the most famous cases was the conversion of Alex Ratisbonne, a French Jew strongly opposed to Christianity. In January of 1842, while visiting Rome, his Catholic friends challenged him to wear the Miraculous Medal, even if only as an experiment. Alex accepted out of courtesy, with no intention of converting. On January 20th, while waiting in the church of St. Andrew of the Frat, he had a sudden apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary, just as she was represented on the medal. This experience instantly transformed him. He asked for baptism, became a priest, and dedicated his entire life to evangelization. His conversion was so remarkable that even Pope Gregory XVI recognized it as authentically miraculous. The physical healings attributed to Mary's intercession through the medal were also numerous terminally ill patients who regained their health, paralytics who walked again, blind people who regained their sight, people on the verge of death who suddenly recovered. Doctors were perplexed by cases that defied all natural explanation. Even more important were the spiritual healings. Hardened sinners who reconciled with God after decades of separation. People trapped in vices who found the strength to break free. Broken marriages that were reconciled. Religious vocations that were born or strengthened. The Miraculous Medal became an instrument of grace for millions of souls. The devotion spread rapidly beyond France. Missionaries took it to all the continents, where it was received with the same fervor in America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Catholics began to wear the medal and experience the fruits of Marian intercession. During epidemics of cholera, plague, and other diseases, the medal was distributed massively among the population, and many attributed their survival to the protection of the Virgin Mary. In contexts of religious persecution, Christians wore it hidden as a sign of their unwavering faith. It became a true universal sacramental, recognized and venerated throughout the Catholic world. The theological message contained in the medal was also of great importance. On its front, it proclaimed the dogma of the Immaculate Conception of Mary, which would be officially defined by Pope Pius IX in 1854, 24 years after the apparitions. The Virgin had gone ahead, so to speak, preparing the hearts of the faithful to receive this truth of faith. The reverse of the medal taught the intimate union between the heart of Jesus and the heart of Mary in the mystery of redemption, inviting the faithful to a devotion that embraced both the Son and the Mother. The 12 stars evoked the fullness of the Church gathered around Mary. Thus, that little medal was a compendium of Mariology and a portable catechism that silently evangelized whoever wore it with faith. Chapter 10. The Passage to Eternity. As the years went by, Sister Catherine's health began to slowly deteriorate. The 46 years of constant work in the Enghien hospice had taken their toll on her body, although her spirit remained as fervent as in her youth. In the last months of her life, she suffered various ailments, which she endured with admirable patience, never complaining or asking for special attention. She continued working as long as her strength allowed, dragging herself even when she could barely walk, because she considered work a form of prayer and didn't want to be a burden to her sisters. In November of 1876, her condition deteriorated considerably. She had to stay in bed, and the sisters who attended to her noticed in her an extraordinary peace and serenity. During her final illness, Sister Catherine partially broke her long silence by revealing to her superior, Sister Dufay, that she was the seer of the apparitions of the Rue du Bac. The superior was astonished to learn that this humble religious woman, who had shared her life for so many years, was the recipient of the heavenly graces that had transformed Marian devotion in the entire world. Sister Catherine also confided that the Blessed Virgin had asked her to have a statue built according to the model of the apparition, a wish that still hadn't been fully fulfilled. On December 31st, 1876, the last day of the year, Sister Catherine received the last sacraments with full awareness and great devotion. She asked to be placed sitting in a chair so she could better adore the Lord, who was coming to visit her for the last time in Holy Communion. Her face radiated a serene joy, and her lips murmured prayers of love to Jesus and Mary. The sisters around her sensed that her soul was already more in heaven than on earth. Sustained by a special grace during her transition, at 7 o'clock that evening, without visible agony or apparent suffering, Sister Catherine breathed her last sigh, entering eternity with the same simplicity and discretion with which she had lived. The news of her death didn't cause much commotion outside the Enghien hospice to the world. One more daughter of charity had passed away, one of the thousands of nuns who anonymously served the poor in hospitals and shelters throughout France. Only a few people knew her true identity: Father Chinchon, her last confessor, who had received from her the complete account of the apparitions, and a few sisters to whom she had confided the secret in her final days. Her funeral was simple, as befitted her humble life. She was buried in the community cemetery, and for years her tomb remained without any special indication to distinguish it from the others. However, death was not the end, but the beginning of her true glorification. Shortly after her passing, testimonies began to arrive regarding favors obtained through her intercession. The sisters who had lived with her began to collect memories and anecdotes that revealed the hidden sanctity of that apparently ordinary life. The processes of beatification began, during which the facts of the apparitions were meticulously verified, and the heroic virtues of the servant of God were studied. When, years later, her body was exhumed for solemn transfer, it was found incorrupt, a traditional sign of the sanctity recognized by the Church. Sister Catherine had departed this world, but her mission continued from heaven, interceding for all those who invoke the Most Holy Virgin through the Miraculous Medal. Chapter 11. Glorification and Canonization. The process of officially recognizing the sanctity of Sister Catherine Labouré was long and meticulous, as is customary in the Catholic Church. In 1895, almost 20 years after her death, the cause for beatification began with the opening of the diocesan process in Paris. The testimonies collected from those who knew her unanimously confirmed her life of heroic virtues, her extraordinary humility, her tireless charity, and her absolute fidelity to the divine will. The miracles obtained through her intercession were subjected to rigorous medical and theological scrutiny, following the protocols established by the Holy See for the verification of supernatural phenomena. On May 28, 1933, Pope Pius V proclaimed Sister Catherine Labouré blessed in a solemn ceremony in St. Peter's Basilica. It was an event of great joy for the Daughters of Charity, and for all devotees of the Miraculous Medal in the world. The little nun, who had lived hidden for 46 years, was now elevated to the altars as a model of holiness for the entire Church. In the Beatification homily, the Holy Father especially highlighted her humility and her fidelity to the Vincentian charism, presenting her as a luminous example for consecrated souls. Thousands of pilgrims came to venerate her relics, which were solemnly transferred to the chapel on the Rue du Bac. Canonization came just 10 years later. On July 27, 1947, Pope Pius V declared Catherine Labouré a saint before a multitude of faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square. The pontiff emphasized in his speech that Catherine's sanctity consisted precisely in the heroic fidelity to daily duties, in the perfect fulfillment of ordinary religious life. Without seeking extraordinary mystical experiences or exceptional revelations, although she had been favored with heavenly apparitions, her true spiritual greatness resided in the evangelical virtues lived with perseverance day after day for almost half a century of hidden life. The chapel on the Rue du Bac, where the apparitions occurred, became one of the most visited Marian shrines in the world. Millions of pilgrims come every year to pray before the altar where the Most Holy Virgin appeared to Saint Catherine, and to venerate the incorrupt body of the saint who rests in a glass urn. The atmosphere of prayer and recollection that permeates that holy place invites conversion and personal encounter with God. Many testimonies of healings, conversions, and special graces continue to arrive, confirming that the message of the Miraculous Medal maintains all its validity and intercessory power. The liturgical feast of Saint Catherine Labouré is celebrated on November 28th, a date close to the anniversary of the apparitions of the Miraculous Medal. On that day, the Daughters of Charity around the world renew their consecration to Mary under the invocation of the Immaculate Conception, and the faithful pray with special fervor the prayer revealed in the medal. O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee. The life of this French peasant saint reminds us that God chooses the humble and small to perform his greatest works, and that true holiness does not consist of extraordinary experiences, but in loving fidelity to the divine will manifest it in every moment of our existence. Chapter 12. Prayer to Saint Catherine Labouré. O glorious Saint Catherine Labouré, humble messenger of the Queen of Heaven, who were chosen by divine providence to transmit to the world the precious gift of the Miraculous Medal, intercede for us before the throne of God. You who contemplated the maternal face of Mary Most Holy and heard from her virginal lips the promises of grace and mercy for all who turn to her with confidence, obtain for us the grace to live always under the protection of our Heavenly Mother, Saint Catherine, sublime model of humility and discretion, who kept in your heart for almost half a century the secret of the apparitions without ever seeking human glory or the recognition of men. Teach us to value the hidden life with Christ in God. Help us to understand that true greatness in the eyes of the Lord consists in faithfully fulfilling daily duties, however humble they may seem, with perfect love and total abandonment to the divine will. Obtain for us the grace to always prefer being to seeming, and to seek only the glory of God in all our actions. Faithful daughter of charity, who consecrated your whole life to the service of the poor, sick, and abandoned, seeing them with the eyes of faith as living images of the same suffering Christ. Obtain for us a compassionate and generous heart. May we recognize in every brother and sister in need the very face of the Lord, and may we never skimp on sacrifices in the exercise of brotherly charity. Grant us to imitate your spirit of service, your patience in times of testing, your gentleness in the face of misunderstandings, and your serene joy, even amidst the difficulties of life. Saint Catherine Labouré, renowned devotee of the Blessed Sacrament and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, ignite in our hearts the fire of Eucharistic love and a tender devotion to the Mother of God. Help us to participate in Holy Mass with the faith and fervor with which you lived it. Adoring deeply Jesus present on the altar, teach us to pray the Holy Rosary with that filial piety that characterized your prayer, meditating on the mysteries of the life of Christ and Mary. Obtain for us the grace to always carry with us the Miraculous Medal, not as a simple charm, but as a sign of our consecration to Mary and of our trust in her maternal intercession. Saint Catherine Labouré, powerful intercessor before God, look with compassion upon our present needs. Here each one can present their particular petition. We ask you especially to intercede for the conversion of sinners, for the sanctification of priests and religious, for the triumph of the Holy Church over all her enemies, visible and invisible, and for true peace in the entire world, that through your intercession and that of Mary Immaculate, we may one day join you in the glory of heaven, to eternally praise the infinite mercy of God. Amen.